And once again, a happy Mother's Day to all of you watching us this afternoon from Atlanta International Raceway here on ESPN. We have just completed one race and are about to bring you now the Atlanta Invitational. This is a special race because the starting field is determined by a vote of the racing fans. Now, he has worked his way up here, and joining us in the broadcast booth will be Darrell Waltrip. Let's go upstairs to Larry Nuber and Darrell Waltrip.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. It's a race with only 10 cars, but it can be very tough, as we just saw.
Well, when you put 10 cars out there, they're all prepared superbly. They're all winners, but unfortunately only one guy can win the 200 grand. So it was a great race, and I guess we'll have it again next year somewhere else.
Well, back to the Invitational, it seems like it turned out just the way everybody dreamed. We have some veterans, we also have some young drivers. But to give you an idea of the competition of the field, we have a new track record on the pole.
Well, it's an interesting concept, having this particular race with the fans selecting the drivers that were to participate in it. Richmond being up there with a track record doesn't surprise me. He's been awful quick all year long, and there's some guys back there with a lot of wins that are right behind him that know how to run 100 and whatever laps, where he only maybe knew how to run one.
And we also have in this field at least 3 drivers who are one of the group of most dedicated drivers in all of automobile racing, starting in the back. Bob, we're on our way downstairs. This could be a good one.
All right, thank you, Larry. We'll look forward to the comments of Darrell Waltrip during this Atlanta Invitational, which is being... Welcome back to Atlanta International Raceway. Darrell Waltrip and Larry Nuber have joined me here in the broadcast booth for this 100-lapper, and the command has already been given to start engines. The cars are warming up, and in just a few seconds, we'll be pulling onto the racetrack for a couple of warm-up laps. Now, here is the starting lineup for today's Atlanta Invitational 100-lapper. On the pole, receiving 132,284 votes, Kyle Petty, the number 7 711 Ford. Outside, Tim Richmond, the number 25 Folgers Chevy. Second row, number 8, Bobby Hillen Jr. in the Miller American Buick. His teammate outside of row number 2, Bobby Allison. Third row, Benny Parsons, car 55, and Lake Speed in car number 4. In row 4, Joe Ruttman in number 26, and Richard Petty in car 43. The fifth row, Dave Marcus in car 73 and Buddy Baker in 88. The sixth row consists of Buddy Arrington in 67 and Jimmy Means in number 52. And in the seventh and final row on the inside, Trevor Boyes in car number 6 and J.D. McDuffie in car number 70. And as you can see, the field is beginning to move away from pit road and onto this 1.52-mile oval here at Atlanta. The purse here at this race is tremendous. The winner's share will be $75,000. Second place picks up $40,000, third $30,000, and so on down the line, with the seventh place driver receiving $13,500. And you can see that just to start this race, the 14th place finisher will pick up $10,000. Well, we have a couple of in-car radios that we'll be enjoying during the race today, and we'll first try to contact Bobby Allison. Bobby, this is Bob Jenkins in the ESPN broadcast booth. Can you read us? This is Bob Jenkins in ESPN broadcast. Can you hear me, Bobby? Bobby will be starting outside of row number 2, having qualified for this race at 169.971 miles an hour, and hopefully we can establish some radio communication with him. He had an excellent day last week, of course, at Talladega, as he came home the winner of that 500-miler. We also have some radio contact, hopefully, with Benny Parsons.
Benny Parsons, Benny, do you feel like you're driving for the 117,000 some odd fans who voted for you, or is this just a race for yourself?
Well, you know, the fans have to take it into consideration because they did vote for me. And for everyone that voted, we'll try to do the best we can.
Benny, you know, we have talked about setting the car up specifically for this race, but you guys went with the traditional setup, didn't you?
Well, basically we did as far as the engine is concerned and what have you. Although the chassis, we tried to get it a little bit closer than normal because we don't have that long to adjust it.
Okay, Benny, good luck to you.
Buddy Arrington in car number 67 has been on pit road again. He made a very brief stop, but is pulling back out onto the racetrack, as you can see, and will fall into his 11th starting position. Okay, it's prediction time. Darrell, who's going to win this race?
Well, there's really in the starting lineup, there's no surprises, I don't think. The cars that you would expect to be near the front of the field are there. The cars that you would expect to be near the rear of the field are there. So I don't know.
emotionally, I'm pulling for Lake Speed. The poor guy is, you know, had trouble, lost his ride, and he's in a good car today. Rick Wilson run that car awfully well last week. But by the same token, Joe Ruttman has been awfully close on a couple of occasions. My hat, I'm going to tip it to Joe today.
All right, Larry, how about you?
It's really a tough one to call because there are so many people who got to be hungry for this race. Richmond's had a disappointing season, wants to be strong. Kyle Petty, one of the 2 or 3 fastest on the track last week. I think, however, Bobby Allison is on a roll.
Well, we have a couple of drivers who have already won this year, namely Kyle Petty, who's on the pole, and Bobby Allison. Now, the number 88 car of Buddy Baker is starting at the rear of the field because he has changed tires. Here comes the field down off the 4th turn, and the green flag is out. The Invitational from Atlanta International Raceway is underway, and from outside, row number 1 taking the lead down into turn number 1 is Tim Richmond, who qualified at 171.665 miles an hour, breaking the previous track record held by Dale Earnhardt. They race down the backstretch with Kyle Petty in 2nd position and a good battle for 3rd place. That is Tim Richmond leading. Kyle Petty running in 2nd position. They come off of corner number 4. Bobby Allison is running in 3rd position, but Bobby Hillin Jr. is right beside him. As a matter of fact, Hillin now moves into 3rd. Good side-by-side battle here as they come off of corner number 2 down the backstretch. The battle is for 4th position as Lake Speed and Bobby Allison go at it, with Speed on the inside and Allison on the high side of the racetrack. And we've heard many drivers say, Darrell, that you got to work low on the racetrack here to be effective.
Well, that's the best place to be, right around the bottom of the racetrack. If your car's handling well there, then you're going to be something to deal with as the day goes on. And so far, looks about what I would expect. Bobby's up on the high side trying to make a move up to the front, and Richard's right there with him. And hang in there, Lake. You're looking good, buddy. He's doing a good job, too. I think the surprise might be Hillin hanging in there in 3rd place.
Darrell, Lake really looks hungry. You talked to him at the top of the show. I asked him yesterday, do you have something to prove? He said, well, no. He said, but I think they're going to notice me tomorrow. Well, look at him skating off the board.
Well, I want him to do well, and I know he wants to do well, and I just hope he realizes this is a little bit of it's not a 10-lap heat race, and it's not a 30-lap feature. You got to pace yourself a little bit.
Boy, this is a great battle here for 4th, rather. Look who's moving up into 4th position. It's Richard Petty.
And listen to the people.
Yeah, Lake just got real. Lake's a little loose. He was jumping sideways off the turn there. He needs to cool out just a little bit.
Petty and Allison running side by side, and behind them now we see Lake Speed and Joe Ruttman running side by side. Behind them it is Benny Parsons on the high side of the racetrack and Dave Marcus. So some good competition back here for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. Up front, however, it's Tim Richmond who has pulled away from 2nd place Kyle Petty.
Darrell, those first 3 cars, Richmond, Kyle Petty, and Bobby Hillin Jr., they seem to have the best stick of anybody out there.
Well, of course, Richmond proved he was quick when he broke the track record, and it'll be interesting to see how he does. That car has been getting awful loose with him in previous races, and it's been quick, but it's been given up. And it looks like they're closing the gap a little bit on him now, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
All right, we'll time this lap and see what kind of speed they're turning out there. We begin lap number 6 here. There are the first 3. It's Tim Richmond in the lead, Kyle Petty in 2nd position, and now Bobby Hillin begins to challenge just a little bit for 3rd spot. And right behind Bobby Hillin, also up there, very much in contention, is Richard Petty.
If there's any surprise here in the early laps, these first 9 cars are together, but dropping way back is Buddy Baker. I would not have expected him to lose hold in the sleep pack so soon.
No, you know, I don't understand about changing the tires. I don't know what he could have done there. So that's an interesting situation. Maybe we can find out what happened. I didn't know that there was any problem with changing tires.
33.6, a 163.071 mile-an-hour lap. So he is considerably off the qualifying speed, but you got to consider all the other factors today.
Well, they'll be running 34-second laps in 15 laps or so. The tires give up, and the guys will be moving around. You see Bobby, he's looking for a high line, trying to find a place to run. It wouldn't surprise me to see RP get up there and rub that fence before the day's over.
And Bobby Hillin beginning to drop back just a little bit now as Richard Petty has moved into 3rd position. And Hillen in 4th with Joe Ruttman in 5th position, and Benny Parsons beginning to make a move on the outside of Joe Ruttman. We're watching the Atlanta Invitational, the field voted on by the spectators, and we'll be back with more right after this. Back at the Atlanta Invitational, where Kyle Petty has all of a sudden come from several car lengths back, shot around Tim Richmond, and Kyle Petty is now in the lead.
Darrell, not a super speedway. We talked about the tires, how much they changed the first 7 laps you're on them. How about the draft here? Did Kyle use the draft? Is there a factor?
There is, but again, handling is a premium here. If you can drive hard into the turn, you can do exactly what Kyle did. You can go under a guy and force him up, and you're off to the races. Kyle's car looks awfully good, and Richmond's car is doing what I pointed out. I think it's given up just a little bit. But the good thing is, for me anyway, I think for the fans too, how tightly bunched these cars are staying. This is a good race. Nobody's really pulling away and leaving anybody.
Now, we will have to have a pit stop, of course, in this race. It's a 100-lap or 152.2 miles, so we certainly will have to have a pit stop and a lead change at the end of the backstretch going into turn number 3. Once again, Tim Richmond pulls his car into the lead with now the Pettys running 2nd and 3rd. Kyle in 2nd, Richard in 3rd. They come off of turn number 4 once again. Bobby Hillen Jr. running 4th, and then Benny Parsons.
Kyle Petty is racing with a cracked bone in his leg as well as a crack across the kneecap. He was injured in that altercation at Talladega last week when Cale Yarborough's engine went. Kyle was in a cast earlier this week, took it off to run here and perform. Also, the Woods brothers. They are the leading all-time winner in terms of a team here at this racetrack.
Dave Marcus also showing well as he has moved ahead of Joe Ruttman. There is Ruttman and Lake Speed running together on the track. And Benny Parsons moving to the inside of Bobby Hillen now as they go into turn number 1 again. And Benny Parsons and Dave Marcus run door handle to door handle into number 1.
This is a critical time in the race right here. We're at 11 laps. This is when the tires start to go away just a little bit. We got a great race. Look at going down the back straightaway. Forget all that other stuff. That's a great race.
Boy, the Pettys are looking strong here, aren't they?
Oh, everybody, look at Marcus. And,
yeah.
It's a great race.
Everybody is staying very close. Oh, Richard, and there's Joe right in the middle in that bright green Quaker State car, finding enough room to get by. Everybody kind of took a back seat to Tim Richmond, but after everybody's tires sort of evened out, they all caught up with them, and it looks like they're going to be this way all day.
They're running at a 162.106 mile-an-hour pace. That was the average after 10 laps, and we've completed 12 now. Down the backstretch, once again, it's Kyle Petty back in the lead with Tim Richmond 2nd. Then Richard Petty, followed by Bobby Hillen, Dave Marcus, Joe Ruttman, Lake Speed, Benny Parsons, Bobby Allison, and Buddy Baker.
And Darrell, while everybody's been changing positions up here and trading, Buddy Baker's caught up. He's moving up. He's visibly closer.
Yeah, he is. He probably was too tight on the start. Maybe he had brand new tires. I don't know. And now the car is freeing up. And the reason I said it was critical, get back to that, as these two guys continue to race each other down the back, 3 wide coming off there. 4. How many wide is that?
Wow.
I've never seen them that wide before.
you ought to watch Daytona sometime.
Oh, man. I think I'll excuse myself. I gotta get back down in the pits. I don't see this stuff down there. But what I was going to say, I'm going to tell you about this later. The cars, you know, we run 8-10 laps in practice at a time and get a feel for what they're going to do. So right now, everybody their car is doing about what they would hope it would do.
Benny Parsons now moving alongside Richard Petty, who has dropped back from the spot that he was running in just a couple of laps ago. He was 3rd, but now Richard begins to drop back rather dramatically on the inside of the racetrack. Look at Dave Marcus, who's making a good showing in that Thunderbird, car number 73.
I must have missed something. I looked up, and Kyle was running 2nd, and I looked up again, and he said, where did he go?
Same way with Richard. He's fallen back considerably. Up front now, it's Tim Richmond, Dave Marcus, and Lake Speed.
Here comes Buddy Baker.
Baker's caught up. The word about Marcus, you know, he's never driven a Ford before. He's in that cream and orange Helen Ray special. The car is out of the Midwest. Helen lives out in the Southwest. But David has never driven a Ford. He's driven a Ford product. But now here comes the number 4 Morgan McClure car. This has now traditionally been a good trap for this team. But Old Lake is giving a good ride, Darrell.
Yeah, he is. He wants to run well, and I'm pulling for him. And, you know, Marcus is one of those guys, have you driven a Ford lately? Well, he may be driving one a lot after today, the way he's running.
That's Lake Speed in the Oldsmobile on the inside of Marcus, and now Joe Ruttman sticks his nose in this battle for 2nd position.
I tell you, this is some great racing, guys. I never would have thought that they would have stayed this bunched up. It's real tight, and it's a great race so far. And I'm surprised that Bobby Allison is back where he is. I thought he would have been a factor.
There's his teammate Bobby Hillin Jr. in the red and white number 8, the second of 2 Miller American cars. Bobby Allison is not even in the picture. Kyle Petty is on the end there. There's Richard, of course, the bright Petty blue STP International or Dayglow or Rocket Red, whatever you want to call it. You can pick out that car very easily. And of course, Lake Speed in this race in the Morgan McClure All-Pro number 4, it's black and yellow. But it's still Richmond up front. Marcus is second. Joe Ruppin is third. Lake Speed is fourth, and Benny Parsons is fifth.
There are 10 cars in the lead draft as they go down the backstretch. The other 4 cars have fallen off the pace considerably. Trevor Boyes, J.D. McDuffie, Buddy Arrington, and Jimmy Means are trailing the first pack of 10 by a considerable amount, but there is some great competition here with the first 10 cars. As Marcus has moved into second, they come down the straightaway. Joe Ruttman now in third, and Benny Parsons fourth. Tim Richmond still leads the Invitational.
But we are going to go 100 laps. It's 150 miles, 152 to be exact. So everybody's got to stop. And Darrell, running this close, once everybody makes a pit stop, this is not an indication as to how the last half of this race will go. Bobby Allison could still easily be the most superior car in the end.
Well, he could be. Of course, the crews are all sitting down there anxiously awaiting to service these cars, and that could be where this race will be won or lost, is in the pits as they come in, and who can get out with a couple of seconds over somebody else could be the difference in who wins and loses. We always talk about the driver in the car, and believe me, as a driver, I can tell you, those boys are standing down there watching that car go around the racetrack are the difference in a lot of races.
Tim Richmond, perhaps as much as anybody, represents a part of the new atmosphere, the new personality. There's Joe Ruttman in the green car, Benny Parsons on the low side in the black and white 55 Cope car. Both of these guys have roots in the north also. That's what I was getting to refer to the new personality of Winston Cup NASCAR stock car racing. We had something like 10 different home states, represented in this field, and 4 of them were from north of the Mason-Dixon line, which is something was just unheard of 10 years ago.
Well, I used to come to the racetrack with my slacks and loafers on, and everybody looked at me like I was a little bit unusual. This morning, Mr. Richmond graced our drivers' meeting in a sport coat, a tie, and a very classy-looking silk shirt. So,
Miami Vice silk shirt.
Yes, and I'm sure it probably has something to do with one of the 10 most best-dressed men in the world or something. I'm sure he's up on that kind of stuff. But anyway, state of the art this morning for Mr. Richmond.
Times have changed.
Yeah, how they have. Are you talking about in the pits or on the track?
Tim Richmond in the number 25 Folgers car is leading the Atlanta Invitational. With 21 laps completed, we're almost a fourth of the way through this event already, and we've already seen some tremendous competition. Dave Marcus now in second position, beginning to close in, and Joe Ruttman is right there also in third position.
If there has been a surprise in this race, definitely it has been Marcus. There goes Ruttman to the inside of Dave, but everybody expected him to be competitive. He is a veteran. He's been around a long time, but as we told you earlier, first time ever in a Ford, and this is supposedly not their frontline car. This is the car that still, as a matter of fact, has Phil Barkdahl's name on the roof. This is the car that Midwest driver has been driving on a couple of races this year, and they chose to use this one for David in his Invitational appearance.
Yeah, this is a good run for Dave. Also for Lake, and I don't want to belabor Lake, but he's doing a good job for a man that's been out of a race car for about a month and a half. And Timmy's hanging in there better than I thought he would. The car seems to be staying with him today, and I still think old Joe Ruttman is going to grease him down here in a little while.
Well, Ruttman started 7th and is now into second spot, and Dave Marcus in car number 73 is in third position.
Dave Marcus, who has been around a long time, and a lot of people probably forget that at one point he had the fastest car in the circuit and won a lot of races in the Harry Hyde prepared K&K Dodge number 71. Harry Hyde, the same guy who was turning the wrenches for Tim Richmond. They've had a frustrating year, and it would be a big day for them if they could pull off a win here.
Well, let's go down to the pit area for an observation from Jackaroo. Jack?
Well, guys, one of the things to remember, gentlemen, is the fact that unlike the Winston, which we previously saw when all cars had to pit on the 40th lap, these guys have got it wide open. The window is whatever they care to do. Talking to all the crew chiefs, however, they said because there are so few cars in the race, we're going to run the string down just as bloody far as we can. Looking for a caution so that they can do the service under the guise of a caution and hopefully with a lot less pressure than under the green.
Now the real good battle, Jack, is for third position on the track as Richmond and Ruttman have separated themselves from this group of cars with Marcus, Lake Speed, Benny Parsons, and Bobby Hillin Kyle Petty.
It looked like Lake got a little loose coming out of 4 then, and the guy's got a little jump on him. His car's running a little looser than the rest of them, but Benny's getting a little loose too. Looks like when they get up here and draft each other side by side like that, the cars do move around.
Oh, there's David, a big slide.
Whoa, is way out toward the wall.
That's that side-by-side racing, the wind coming off of those cars, and the tires are a little slick and a little hot, and I think you're going to see a lot of moving around before this day's over.
And Lake Speed loses a position as Parsons now moves up to the outside to run alongside him. So we are 26 laps into this race now. The Atlanta Invitational, the lead held by Tim Richmond. Second position is Joe Ruttman. We'll be back in just a moment. Jenkins, Larry Newber, Jack Arute, and Darrell Waltrip back for the Atlanta Invitational. Trevor Boyes in car number 6, one of the starters. The 14 starters in this race has been black flagged, and he is back in the garage area. On the racetrack, the battle is for the lead as Tim Richmond and Joe Ruttman are very close, but they have almost a half a straightaway interval between themselves and the third place battle, which involves many cars. Benny Parsons has now moved into third with Marcus fourth and Lake Speed fifth.
The straightaways are short here. Remember, there may be just a little more than a quarter of a mile. You're in the turns like a half mile at each end of the racetrack, so having a half of front straightaway lead is not quite as substantial as it would be at a place like Talladega or Daytona.
No, and that's why you see a lot of the passing is done entering the turn, because the driver's car that's handling better, he can stay on the gas longer. And because there is so much turn, you have to set a guy up to passing going into a turn most of the time.
The average speed 160.916 miles an hour. We asked Lake Speed earlier in the weekend about proving something in this event.
Because of the events of 1986, do you think that maybe you have much more to prove than anybody else in Sunday's race?
Not really, Larry. I think the most of the people in this garage area and the people that have been watching Grand National racing for the years, they've watched me race now for about 5 or 6 years, and they either believe in me or they don't. The fans seem to believe in me, and that just tickled me to death. And I think there's a lot of people in the garage area that have given me an awful lot of support, too. People like Larry and Tim McClure, all-pro auto parts people coming behind me. There's an awful lot of people out here that believe in Lake Speed. We're going to get out there Sunday and give it our best shot, but I don't think that our career, our future lies in one race.
Lake Speed currently in fourth position. As we mentioned earlier, this is the car that Rick Wilson ran so well at Talladega just a week ago.
I think Benny's really picking up the pace a little bit. He's starting to settle in here, and I think he's closing down on the leaders just a little bit.
All right, let's go down to the pit area where Jack Arute is with Trevor Boyes.
And Trevor, you certainly didn't want to be in the pit area this early in the race. What put you out?
We lost an engine. Unfortunately, we just come down here. We had engine problems in practice, changed motors, put a short track motor in thinking maybe the combination would work here, but unfortunately it didn't.
Well, now that you've been in the first annual Atlanta Invitational, what are your thoughts about this type of racing, this type of competition? Do you like it?
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole weekend. It wasn't a points race. It wasn't no pressure. It was a thing the fans did, got me in. I'm, proud of that, and we'll come back next year and try harder.
Well, he's first out, but he's number one in a lot of fans' hearts. That's how he got in the race.
Trevor Boyes out of competition, but Tim Richmond in number 25 and Joe Ruttman in 26 are very much in this race, battling for the lead. There's the average speed at the end of 30 laps, 160.83. Trevor brings up a good point, Darrell, that we might want to comment on. That is, you come here in a relaxed atmosphere, unlike last year when you had a tremendously big and important race the day after, as we watched Jimmy Means in the pit area.
Well, that's true. A lot of the drivers didn't like having to prepare for the World 600 and run the Winston and all that stuff in the same weekend. And that's why the event ended up on its own, more or less, to give guys a little bit more time to prepare for it, hopefully make for a better show. Frankly, I just as soon to have had it, with a companion, this being a companion event, but it's going to work out pretty good. I think this thing can support itself as we go along.
Trevor was one of the surprises getting into this race, although he did some active campaigning. He worked very hard to earn his invitation. We're looking at Jimmy Means a couple of seconds ago. He's one of those guys we referred to at the top of the show, Darrell, that is probably one of the most deserving in all of racing. He comes every week. It's his job. He pours his heart and soul in it. He's certainly underfinanced. Everybody knows that. But it was nice to see him and J.D. McDuffie, people like that, put it in. And Joe Ruttman is now beginning to mount his challenge on Mr. Richmond.
Yes, Joe's going to get by to him here, looks like. And just a real quick on Jimmy Means. Sandy Jones is Jimmy's crew chief, and he now works for us. And to tell you the quality and caliber of people that these guys have been working for, Sandy is one of the best mechanics that we've got working on our race car. So, you know, Jimmy is underfinanced, to put it politely. If he had a little bit more help, he knows a good mechanic, he knows a good race car, and he's a good race driver, but he just he doesn't have those big dollars that it takes to do the job.
Pretty good evidence there in turns 1 and 2 that the low side is the place to be, as that's where Joe Ruttman was when he passed Tim Richmond and has now moved himself into the lead as they come down and complete lap number 36. Joe Ruttman leads, Tim Richmond drafting right behind him.
Yeah, that was a good pass, but I still see Benny is closing up right real nicely here, and he could be a factor in this lead draft here just a little bit.
In terms of the fan balloting, Ruttman came in as one of those marginal people. Yes, he is visible. He's run well. You expected Richmond to get in. You expected Benny Parsons to get in among the top 3. Some of the people who did not get voted in were a couple of winners of 1986 already. Morgan Shepherd, Rusty Wallace, Bobby Allison, of course. It was basically a shoe-in. Dave Marcus had an awful lot of support going in, but Ken Schrader was not voted in. David Pearson, surprisingly, among the non-invitees. Bill Parsons, Bobby Ellis, Ron Bouchard, Mike Alexander, perhaps some of the people who came close but just didn't garner enough of the 189,000 odd votes were cast.
We were watching 6th, 7th, and 8th place there just a minute ago as Bobby Allison now has moved into 6th and coming back after trailing this 10-car draft that we've had the first few laps.
It's a good race up front, and Joe and Tim are swapping the lead around, and we got J.D. slowing down as he goes by the start-finish line here, and here comes Benny.
Benny is doing well as J.D. McDuffie, who is making his 600th race start here today and has never recorded a victory in Winston Cup competition.
Well, I know we got radio contact with Benny. I wish we could take a time out here and ask old Ben how's it going out there right now, Benny. I don't think we ought to do that.
I'm sure he has his hands full. There's McDuffie to the inside of the racetrack going down the backstretch. Meanwhile, Richard Petty and Buddy Baker are also in a contest. This would be for 9th position.
Buddy Baker and Richard Petty, who at one time, believe it or not, were teammates, and they represent the 2nd generation. There are some 3rd generation drivers which are involved in Winston Cup, NASCAR stock car racing now, but these two guys have been around a long time, and they're two of the true veterans of this type of racing.
JD is really going slow as he comes through on the apron down to 3 and 4. I think he's going to make it back to the pits, but if he didn't, no, he's going to make it okay. I was going to say it'd be a great time for a caution flag as far as pit stops are concerned.
Good side-by-side racing here. It's Buddy Baker to the inside and Richard Petty to the outside. Now Baker moves ahead of Petty, moving out of corner number 4. Well, the owner of this number 26 Quaker State car is the legendary drag racer Kenny Bernstein, and he is down in the pit area. Let's go to Jack Arute.
And he's a motor specialist in his own right, but Kenny, is Joe running this race according to your pregame plan? Is this the way you wanted it to be? Challenge for the lead now?
Well, absolutely. We want him to go to the lead anytime he can. That's Larry McReynolds, the crew chief's call. They really decipher what they're going to do. But right now, it's a little loose, Joe said, and he's having his hands full, but he is pushing hard.
Well, if he's running loose, what kind of an adjustment will you make on that one pit stop, knowing that's the only chance you'll have to get your hands on that car?
Obviously, Jack, we got to tighten him up some. We got to give him some stagger in the tires or give him a little wedge in the car, tighten it up so that he can drive around the corners.
Well, Bob, Larry, Darrell Waltrip can tell you upstairs just how critical that can be, and you better hope that you choose right when you've only got one shot.
Yeah, Jack, stay there and watch and see what they do, and so I'll know what to do to Matt. I'm probably going to have the same problem.
Darrell, yesterday, Joe was stressing to me, ironically enough, that the turns are so big here that you have to concentrate on being as tight as you can get at the apex, right in the center of it.
Yeah, it's true. You can't stand the car turning sideways. You want to be turning to the left all the time, but if the car ever jumps sideways with you, in other words, where you got to turn back to the right, that's what kills your speed here. You got to be able to drive into these corners as hard as you possibly can because they're such big, long, sweeping turns, and that's where you make all the time, driving in hard and the car staying under you.
All right, let's run down how they're running now. Really, the first 3 positions are the closest. That's Tim Richmond in the lead, Joe Ruttman second, and Benny Parsons running in 3rd place. Back and 4th is Lake Speed. 5th is Bobby Hillen. 6th is Bobby Allison. 7th, Kyle Petty. 8th is Dave Marcus. Running in 9th place is Buddy Baker. 10th is Richard Petty. Then in 11th place be the number 67 of Buddy Arrington. 12th is Jimmy Means. And 13th is J.D. McNuffie, who has already dropped out of the race, and so has Trevor Boys.
You know, I think that Benny may be cooling it right now. I think Benny raced up there and got these guys, caught these guys. He's going to wait for the pit stop now to make an adjustment, change tires, and then have at it.
All right, when can we expect this pit stop now?
Well, I'd say around, what, 60 laps?
67 laps is about 100 miles in this place, so all things being equal, that's probably where
And I'd say they'd take it right to the limit, particularly the leaders, because they don't want to come in until they have to, and then they'll have the fresh tires to go the rest of the way, or at least as fresh as they can possibly have.
You know, Darrell, I think of everybody in the Invitational field, the most recent Atlanta winner was Benny.
Yeah, that's true. Benny had an awful good run here back, what, a year or so ago, 2 years ago, and won this race in a fine fashion. Tim Richmond looked awfully strong here in the spring race this year when he raced to the front and then had a throttle problem. So thing was sticking open with him or something. He had a fast car that day, and I thought he would probably be a contender. And the reason I think Joe's going to be is running as well as he is, that car has looked really fast on a number of occasions. Joe's had some problems, but I spent some time with Kenny this week, and he feels like their team's coming online now, and I think they're going to be a team to reckon with as the season goes along.
As the leaders begin to lap Buddy Arrington, the slowest car on the racetrack right now, and we are nearing the halfway point. We've completed 46 out of 100 laps. There are the first three as they lap Buddy Arrington. Tim Richmond is running in the lead with Joe Ruttman in second position, and third with Benny Parsons in car number 55. Right now, ESPN and NASCAR present with Benny Parsons a track fact.
Radio contact, here's what we're talking about. 2 earplugs, especially made for each driver's ear. Put them in, put on the helmet. Then Scott plugs in the earplugs, and then he gets a power source and plugs it in the back of the helmet. The driver then reaches down, turns on the radio, adjusts the microphones in front of his mouth, pushes the button down, says to the crew, see you guys in Victory Lane in about an hour or so.
And this track fact has been brought to you by Levi Garrett Chewing Tobacco. Time after time, the quality comes through. You're watching the Atlanta Invitational NASCAR race. There are the first 5 after 47 of 100 laps. We'll be back in a moment. Today, he'll explain NASCAR racing on June the 10th. Well, Dave Marcus appears to be the first to come in for his regularly scheduled pit stop. The crew goes to work on the right side of that car, changing the rubber. Marcus has very much been in contention for the lead of this race, but now becomes the first to pit, and they are making some chassis adjustments. You can see the pit crew member who has climbed in the right side of that car, and they're changing all 4 tires.
That's it's not surprising that he's in first. The Fords traditionally don't get quite as good a gas mileage as the Chevrolets. That he's changing 4 tires, that's a surprise.
He's really in a bit early. Apparently the setup is going away quickly, Darrell, because he figured I better go in now. If I wait longer, I'm going to lose that much more time on the racetrack. I'll make the stop now. He's inside the window. He can go the rest of the way.
By virtue of changing 4 tires, he may have had a tire going down, and he may have felt that there was something wrong with the tires, and he wanted to change all 4 of them just to be safe.
Well, we've mentioned on a couple of occasions that Benny Parsons is running very strong. He's in 3rd position behind Joe Ruttman and Tim Richmond, and Jack Arute is down in the pit area with Leo Jackson.
And Leo Jackson is the team owner of this operation for Benny Parsons. Leo, it looked as if Benny closed right up to the rear bumper of the front runners and then backed off, trying to conserve tires and handles until you can make the pit stop.
Well, you know, I really don't know. He says that the car is, you know, perfect by itself and maybe a little bit loose right behind another car. We have some tires laid out here. You know, I think we'll tighten the car up a little bit when we change the tires.
Under green flag conditions, under the green, will you go for 2 or will you go for 4 all the way around in the tire department?
I didn't hear you.
Will you go for 4 tires or 2 tires on the pit stop?
Well, if it's green, we'll go 2. If it's caution, we'll go 4.
Well, Leo, your driver's now in second. You better get back to business because he may be going for first shortly.
Very possible the pulled off that pass for second position at the end of the backstretch going into 3. Benny Parsons now second, setting his sights on the leader, Tim Richmond.
Darrell, I've heard that a number of times this year that the new cars are real rock solid when they're by themselves. When you get around traffic, it gets a little dicey. You really got to pay attention.
Well, the air comes over the car so much differently than what we were accustomed to with the slanted back windows on all the cars now. We do get a bit of a ducktail effect. Bill had that as an advantage last year, and now everybody has the same disadvantage this year. But I was impressed with the way Benny chased this first two cars down, Tim and Joe, and now he looks like he's going to maybe take the lead here. So Benny's got a strong car under him right now. And well, you might add that our old buddy Lake, now he's certainly not up there in the front, but he's not falling off the pace that badly. He's still within striking distance.
Lake Speed running in 4th place. There are your first two, Tim Richmond and Benny Parsons. 55 laps have been completed. You're watching the Atlanta Invitational on ESPN, and we'll return after these messages. We are back at Atlanta for the NASCAR Invitational. Kyle Petty is in the pits. He was our pole sitter. They took on 2 new tires and filled the car with fuel, of course. Let's go to Jackaroo.
Now the heavy hitters make their presence known on pit lane. First one in is Benny Parsons. The crew goes to the outside tires. Right side rubber being exchanged very quickly, while 22 gallons of fuel are going in the back of the car. You see the crew working like choreography. They come out, he's out and away. Now, where is Tim Richmond? Richmond in number 25, Harry Hyde's crew, is getting ready, but he has not made his presence known, and here he comes now.
Yes, he's slowing out of turn number 4, Jack. We'll just keep it with you as he's entering pit lane right now.
The Chevrolet making its round turn down towards his position. He somewhat trying to get on the binders. Something awry with that car. He tries to hit the marks there by the Folgers crew. They go to work. They are going to change left side tires. Now, this will be interesting to see if they elect to do just lefts or go around and then take on the rights. Normally, you would go to the rights first and then take the lefts afterwards. But this could be a strategy move on Harry Hyde's part for Tim Richmond. Richmond looking out. The jack drops. He's away. A good quick stop.
I don't think it was as quick as Benny's, though. Now here comes Joe Ruttman, who is running 3rd, coming in for a stop.
Now, Larry McReynolds and his crew will have to go to work. They've got 2 marks to measure their pit stop by. One crew took on right side tires. The other took on lefts. Let's see what McReynolds calls for Joe Ruttman's machine. It comes to a stop, and at least first and foremost, they're going to the right side. The jack goes off. The tires are already off, and new ones are being exchanged. The lugs being attached by the tire men. A very quick stop. Will they go? Yes, 4 tires for Joe Ruttman. So we've got 3 choices with the top 3 competitors. Right side with 1, and now we'll have a chassis adjustment on Joe Ruttman's car as well. So this will be a little longer under green flag conditions, but it could spell the difference competitive-wise at the end of this Atlanta Invitational. They complete their work on the left side. And the last car to pit will be Bobby Allison. Has he learned something after watching all this? Well, time will tell when he goes in for service from his crew. Locks the car up, position, waiting for service. They come across, making a chassis adjustment first. You notice they run without windows in the upper window so they can make the chassis adjustments easy. They go to the right side tires, and it looks like it's going to be a fairly normal pit stop for Bobby Allison. He's gone for rights. What do you think, Darrell?
So far, the big surprise was Ruttman, taking on 4 tires. I don't believe I'd have done that, and plus they had a problem with an air wrench on the left front. Richmond, the problem that these guys are having when Trevor Boyd's engine blew, he left oil down here in the pit lane. They put down the stay dry, and these guys are coming in hot, as you'd expect them to, hitting the stay dry and getting all out of shape. That hurt Timmy a little bit, and hurt Benny a little bit. Seemed like these guys back on this side of the start-finish line on the far side are having the most trouble. Everything else pretty routine. Everybody else made a normal pit stop, but as we said at the front of the show, pit stops were going to be the difference. Who could get in, who could get out, and who did what was going to make the difference. And as you can see, Richmond is long gone.
And the guy who came out best in all of this
Benny's long gone.
Was Benny Parsons, with Tim Richmond now running 2nd. Bobby Hillen Jr. is 3rd. Running in 4th position is Lake Speed, and in 5th position is Kyle Petty. All of those standings now after the pit stops have been made. They're still averaging 160.398 miles an hour. So our colleague who helped analyze everything in the Winston leads here in the Invitational. We'll be right back at Atlanta International Raceway. back at the Atlanta Invitational. The leader is Benny Parsons. Second, Tim Richmond. Third, Bobby Hillen Jr. Fourth is Lake Speed. And fifth is Bobby Allison. 78 out of 100 laps completed. We have had 7 lead changes among 5 drivers. They're averaging 158.620 miles an hour. There is your leader, Benny Parsons. But the interval between Parsons and second place Tim Richmond has closed considerably. It was about 5.5 seconds about 10 laps ago, and now it's down to just about 2 seconds. So Benny has his hands full. There is Richmond. You can see how close the interval now is. Marcus running between the two.
Darrell, we were talking during the break about how Benny got out earlier than Richmond. The agreement was that Richmond seemed to lose a little more time coming in, but maybe Benny did not take a full can of gasoline.
I think that's the secret right there. Benny took about a can and a half, just whatever they felt they needed to finish this race. And Timmy did sit there and wait for 2 cans of gas to be put in the car. You're talking about an anxious bunch of guys. You want to know what a crew does during a race? They've got 9 stopwatches down there, and all of them are timing something. I don't know what. Rick Hendricks is on that stool there. He's going to screw it right in the ground.
Well, the interval between Parsons, that man right there, the leader, you can see that he has 271 career top 10s. He's been around a few years, too. And Tim Richmond is visibly shrinking. But Tim Richmond, there you see him on your screen, he now has the chore of getting around Dave Marcus. And it took Benny Parsons about 4 or 5 competitive laps to get around Dave.
I don't think Tim will have that much trouble because, well, in all due respect to Mr. Marcus, he was trying to keep him going a lap down just in case he caught a caution. So he would hold the leader up, or he would race the leader a little harder than I think he's going to race Tim. He's not going to lay down and let Tim go by, but I don't think you'll see him hold Tim up very long.
The pole sitter for this race, Kyle Petty, has dropped out of competition. Kyle had a rough race all along as he only led, I think, 1 lap and has dropped out of competition. And you can see now that Tim Richmond is right up on the back bumper of Dave Marcus. And when he passes Marcus, if he does, there will be clear sailing and clear racetrack between himself and the leader, Benny Parsons. Richmond to the inside of Marcus now at the end of turn number 2, going down the backstretch. Marcus is being a little obstinate here, too. He just runs right alongside Richmond. Now Richmond with a slight advantage in turn number 3.
Bob, one thing we got to remember now, Marcus came in a little early and took on 4 tires, where the other guys, Benny and Tim, only took on 2 tires. So he has somewhat of a Timmy and Marcus just got together going down through here.
He did bump. Look at this. Oh, and Tim is loose. He almost spins.
Wow, what an outstanding job driving.
Man.
Tim Richmond played some real contact roller derby trying to get around Dave Marcus. And about 3 or 4 times he almost lost it, including right between turns 1 and 2. Outstanding job of driving, but did that abuse the tires?
Well, let me just make one observation here. Benny Parsons, an older driver, I might add, took his time, more experience. Sorry, Benny, more experience. He took his time in that situation, and Tim was not going to have any part of what was going on. He was wanting Marcus out of his way.
All right, now, Darren, here's a replay. Explain what happened.
Well, they hit back here on the straightaway earlier, and that set this whole deal up. And Marcus said, hey, you hit me on the straightaway. How about a little nudge right here, old buddy? And I tell you, that's one fine piece of driving right there. It's hard to get a car crossed up at 160 miles an hour and hang on to it. But the thing that's also significant, Mr. Marcus is a little upset, and he's going to race old Tim as hard as he can. And in the meantime, 55 is leaving away from here.
Yeah, it was a 1.9-second interval, and since that little incident down there in turn number 1, it is a 3.3-second interval. Benny with that much pad between himself and Tim.
I think Tim's really hurt the tires. He's burnt the right rear on the car, and now the car is real loose with him, and Dave right there on his back bumper is making the car loose. So this could be a $75,000 power play.
Well, I tell you, that's a really tough call. If you're looking at the situation of Dave Marcus, whether he was in the right or whether Tim was in the right, who was in the wrong, that's a difficult one. As Darrell mentioned, you want to try and stay close. So if you get maybe 2 cautions bunched together, maybe you can get your lead back. But it started here on the front stretch. Actually, in turn 4, Darrell, they got close together. They were rubbing, and they got down to number 1. And Richmond just said, I am not going to let you lead going into 1. And he slowed down a little bit on Dave Marcus, and they touched.
He's done some damage to the right side of the car. As they hit going down the straightaway here, it was a hard hit, and also I think he's cut a tire, hurt a tire, and that car is not handling, and I would say they're going to bring him in any time now.
We'll watch for the stop by Tim Richmond. If he does, in fact, choose to come in, he stays out there for another lap. There are only a little less less than 14 laps to go now for Benny Parsons, and he stands a chance of winning $75,000 here in the Atlanta Invitational.
Go ahead, Darrell.
I'm sorry. The significant thing, again, in this situation was the pit stop. Benny got out. He beat
Well, some information from Jack Arute in the pit area. What is the situation down there, Jack?
Well, I'm here with Harry Hyde, and Harry, you're trying to call him in, but he won't come in.
Well, we're going to try to... No, he's going to have to come in, I think. He doesn't want to come in, but he's going to have to come in, I think.
Well, that's the word from Tim Richmond's mentor and chief mechanic. Harry Hyde has been trying to call him in the last 2 laps, and Darrell, you were exactly right. They think they've got a tire going soft on the side.
Yeah, they had significant impact on the front straightaway here. There's black marks all down the side of that car. He's possibly cut a tire down, and he's just trying to hang on and make it to the end here, but I think he's going to have to bring the car in.
The interval is back up to almost 5 seconds, so it's where it was about 25 laps ago, just after the pit stop.
Well, Hillen continues to run comfortably in third as we watch second place Tim Richmond. Lake Speed is in fourth, and Joe Ruttman has moved past Bobby Allison for fifth. So there's no story that's developing or unfolding on the racetrack. The only drama was Ruttman kind of quietly getting around Bobby Allison. Bobby certainly not showing the speed that we saw last week. That was my pick there. And I both took a stand. Jacobs never said a word. I suppose he's going to tell us now.
I'll tell you guys, I think that Benny Parsons.
Sure. That's why you're holding that mic in your hand, right? You're going to call Benny on this last lap here and congratulate him.
Right. Well, of the 14 drivers who were in this race, 7 of them have career wins. Richard Petty, of course, with the most, Bobby Allison Baker, Marcus Richmond, and Kyle Petty. They accounted for a grand total of 332 career wins.
With less than 10 laps to go, let's go back down to Jack Arute.
I'd like to just point out that although he's going against the wishes of his crew chief, Harry Hyde, Tim Richmond, to me, is showing an awful lot of poise in knowing just how short this race indeed is. With only 10 laps to go, granted, he's going to have to wrestle it like a grizzly bear, but if he can keep that tire just a little soft and not totally soft, he can still come back paying into money at the end of this event.
Well, that's a good point. Now, the interval between second and third is pretty significant. There is an entire straightaway and then some between second and third. So Tim does stand a very good chance here if he can hold on for the next 9 laps of finishing in second. Just 9 more laps to go. Benny Parsons leads the Atlanta Invitational. At Atlanta for the Invitational, there is Tim Richmond, who is running in second position, but that car is tremendously loose. He's all over the racetrack.
Well, as we were saying in the break, they didn't change right side tires. They went with the left side tire change. Him and Marcus getting together could get the car all sideways, took what little rubber those right side tires had on them and just wore it right on off. I will say this, Tim Richmond can hang on to a loose race car about as well as anybody I've ever seen. I don't know if that's from IndyCar experience, dirt track experience, or just what you don't know won't hurt you. I can't tell for sure.
There was a race earlier this year. Didn't he break like a rear ratchet, which is almost impossible to steer a car? It wants to turn to the right every time you go into a corner, or worse yet, you don't know which way it's going to go. And Tim stayed with that car for several laps in those conditions, which were basically impossible for almost anybody else.
See, a lot of us, we start complaining about the car, and some guys, they just figure, well, it's the way I'm driving it. I got to drive it differently.
5 laps to go in the Atlanta Invitational. Benny Parsons on the point right now, with Richmond still in second. Third is Bobby Hillen Jr. Fourth is Lake Speed, and fifth is Joe Ruttman. And the question is, can Benny hang on for the win here, and can Richmond continue to manhandle that very abrasive race car that he's just having a terrible time controlling?
See, the good thing is, from one perspective, he's hanging on to it, and he's going to finish second, looks like. If you're the crew chief, if something happens and you end up in trouble, then the crew chief's going to say, if you'd have come in like I told you to, that wouldn't have happened. So it really puts a driver, and I know I've been there, between a rock and a hard place.
Well, there's Joe Ruttman, and even though it's been a good day, he's moved up after that very long pit stop that Darrell commented about earlier. I'm sure this is a bit of a disappointment. They were really pointing for this race, and even in the pits at Talladega last week, Joe was talking to me about Atlanta. They thought they had found some little secrets that might propel them into the winner's circle.
I think they had the car to do it. I think they just had some miscommunication in the pit. And really, the four-tire change wasn't as bad as the fact that an air wrench messed up on the left front. I think I saw him take a lot of extra time there. So in a short race like this, 4 tires was a thing that I don't know what I'd have done. I think I'd have went with the 2.
Well, there are less than 3 laps to go. As a matter of fact, when Benny comes around this time, he'll have just 2 more circuits of this 1.522-mile racetrack, and the Invitational victory will be his. Here he is off the 4th corner. 2 more laps to go.
Not only was Benny the most recent winner of all the people who were in this invitational field here in Atlanta, but back in March, he had the best finish here among these same drivers. He finished just ahead of Tim Richmond, by the way, who was 7th. So Parsons and Richmond, who did well here in March, it looks like the 2 of them have the edge on the rest of this field, and it's pretty constant for the 1986 season there.
Yeah, Timmy Means is making a pit stop or coming into pits. I don't know if there's a problem or not. We got that white flag. I know Benny is breathing a sigh of relief right there.
Benny Parsons takes the white flag. Just 1 more lap to go. He's got Buddy Baker right in front of him. Benny has led since lap number 64. We have had 5 different leaders of this race. Tim Richmond led 10 laps. The pole sitter Kyle Petty, before dropping out, led 2. Then Joe Ruttman led. So did Bobby Allison. But this man has pretty much had control since lap number 64, and it appears as if Benny Parsons will march to victory in the Atlanta Invitational and pick up $75,000. Here comes the Copenhagen Oldsmobile off of turn number 4. He sees the checkered flag, and he gets it. Benny Parsons wins.
And not only does he pick up $75,000 for a victory here, but he gains entrance to next year's Winston race. He goes into that field as the first one.
Yeah, he does. And I think the interesting thing here would be to get a camera down there and see how Tim and Dave Marcus communicate with each other.
Yeah, we'll try to talk to him on the radio here.
Well, Benny Parsons, these are your old friends up in the booth wanting to share some of that winner's purse. How about it?
Hey, come on down, guys. Let's go to victory lane.
Benny, the last time you won one of these races was here. The feeling must be fantastic.
Well, man, it is over. This is wonderful.
Hey, Ben, this ODW, way to go, buddy. I watched the track fact, and you said about an hour from now I'll be in victory lane. How do you feel about the Winston? Could you give me a little insight?
I think they'll have a rule that the fellow who wins the Invitational goes straight to the Winston. I'm ready, and the guys are ready.
Benny, the only anxious moments was getting around Dave Marcus, though, eh?
It was kind of anxious there.
All right, we'll, of course, have a further and more in-depth conversation with him in victory lane. He pulls into victory lane, and we'll be back in just a moment for an interview with him with Jack Arute. Benny Parsons wins the Atlanta Invitational. We'll return after these messages.
Welcome home.
How about this, Jackie? You know, hey, guys, you fellas up in the booth, Nuber and Jenkins, you ought to be down here celebrating with us. And especially all those fans that voted for me. I wish that all 132,000 or whatever it was could be here.
Well, Jerry Long has given you the first annual Winston Invitational trophy, but the question, the difference in the race seemed to be your pit crew.
Did they do the job? You know, we talk about races being won by pit crews and on pit road. Today was never a better example. I mean, hey, I go in the pits running second and come out with a 5 or 6 second lead. They killed him on pit road.
Well, it was incredible, and also, in case you don't know already, as you take the bus from your wife, you've now qualified for the 1987 Winston Invitational for the Winston. Then you'll be going for, what, $200,000 up for grabs. Good luck to you, Benny. That's it from victory lane. Let's go back up topside.
And our congratulations, of course, from the booth, and we wish we could be down there in the victory celebration. Well, the Invitational has been brought to you by Today's Chevrolet, who invites you to live the style, performance, and fun of Chevrolet in '86. By Levi Garrett Chewing Tobacco. Time after time, the quality comes through. And by Busch Beer, the beer with a taste as smooth as its name. We will be back to wrap up the day's events here at Atlanta International Raceway right after we pause for these messages. The top 5 finishers in the Atlanta Invitational. The winner, Benny Parsons, finishing in 2nd position, Tim Richmond, and Bobby Hillen Jr. 4th was Lake Speed, and 5th was Joe Ruttman. Coming up next here on ESPN, the 6-hour IMSA endurance race from Riverside, California. Well, on this Mother's Day, 1986, we salute the class of 85 participants in today's Winston. All winners last year except Jeff Bodine. Finishing 10th today, Greg Sachs. He wins $10,000. Next, Terry Labonte picking up $14,500. 8th was Ricky Rudd, $15,500. 7th was Jeff Bodine, earning $20,000 in today's Winston. Finishing in 6th position was Neil Bonnet, picking up $25,000. Next was Cale Yarborough, who earned $30,000 for his work today. Finishing in 4th place was Darrell Waltrip, winning $50,000. Harry Gant finished in 3rd place, winning $60,000. In 2nd spot was Dale Earnhardt, who walked off with $75,000. And the big winner, Bill Elliott, a total of $240,000. My thanks to Larry Newber, Jack Arute, Benny Parsons.